am Lucy D'Agostino McGowan. I am an assistant professor here, and I'm really excited to tell you about some of the work that I'm doing, and hopefully you'll consider joining. You can find a little bit more about the broad spectrum of work that I do on my website at lucymcgowan.com. But today I'm just going to be talking about one area that I'm recruiting students for in particular. So I've got this lab, the D'Agostino McGowan Data Science Lab here on campus, and you can find more about what we do there at dmds.lucymcgowan.com. And if you go there, you'll see a whole bunch of ongoing projects that we have, things ranging from statistical communication, which is what I'm going to focus on today, to quantifying sensitivity to unmeasured confounding, building R packages, looking at best practices for teaching data science, etc. Okay, so statistical communication, what do I mean by that? So I'm interested in kind of two pieces here. I'm interested both in how statistics are communicated in the media and also how people then interpret that information. So here I've pulled a whole bunch of headlines from the summer from a variety of news sources like CNBC, the Washington Post, etc. And all of these are reporting the same statistic. They're showing that a CDC study showed that 3/4 of people infected in a Massachusetts coronavirus outbreak were vaccinated. And this piece of information here, while true and descriptive, is a little bit misleading for the general public, or at least the folks that I spoke with tended to interpret this incorrectly. So when they saw this piece of information, it sort of, the first reaction was that perhaps the vaccine is not working because it looks like there's a large percentage of people in this population that tested positive that were vaccinated. But it turns out that this particular number, the 74%, is not actually meaningful when we're trying to determine how effective the vaccine is because it's the flipped conditional of what we're actually interested in. And what I mean by that is, if you imagine a population, so here I've got one that was somewhat like this one in Massachusetts, where the green people indicate people who are vaccinated and the blue people indicate people who are not. If I want to know how effective the vaccine is, the way I would do that is compare the green people who got infected to the green people who did not, and then compare kind of that proportion to the blue people who got infected compared to the blue people who did not. And so the denominator of interest here is going to be either all of those who were vaccinated or all of those who were not vaccinated, and comparing that to sort of make that apples to apples comparison to understand how effective this vaccine is. And what these articles were doing was instead they were focusing just on the cohort that actually got sick. So it would be like if we just zoomed in on these people. And if you just look at these folks, it looks like, and it is true, that 50% of those who got sick were vaccinated. But that doesn't tell the whole story because it obfuscates, or it doesn't tell us the actual denominator in each case. And so the metrics like what were shown in those articles, that kind of 50% of the sick were vaccinated, this is the wrong metric because it doesn't actually give you the information that you need when trying to make a decision. The actual correct answer, using this little toy example, would be 89% effective. That would be how you would determine how effective this vaccine is. And to get to this number, I took the proportion among those who were vaccinated that got sick, and I compared that to the proportion among those who were unvaccinated that got sick. And so this is just one example of the type of statistical communication tool. So one thing you could be doing in my lab would be to pull these type of headlines from the media sources and then kind of come up with ways to explain why that particular headline may or may not be misleading in a kind of easy to digest manner. And another project kind of in the same vein that I'm currently working on is one I started with a student, Hannah Mendoza, a couple years ago. She graduated last year after doing an undergrad thesis with me, where she worked on this question of if we could quantify the impact of disclosing uncertainty on decision making. And so this is similar. Our question here was whether if you kind of disclose uncertainty to people, if it changes their likelihood to make a decision. So we randomized people to two groups, one that saw information, a public health recommendation that was just given without any additional ancillary or uncertainty information given. And the other group was given a little more information in that initial public health recommendation. So they were told what the recommendation was based on. So they were given a little information about the study that recommendation came from. The results of that study were highlighted, and the uncertainty as well was highlighted. So in this case, the study was conducted on a different population than what was of interest. And then we gave them a second statement. So we gave them basically new evidence and new advice. And we saw if the people who had seen the uncertainty initially were more or less likely to follow this new advice. And what we found was that people who saw uncertainty were less likely to comply with that original recommendation. But among those not following the final recommendation a priori, so among those who had initially indicated that they would have done something different, those who saw the uncertainty were actually more likely to comply after the recommendation changed compared to those who had not been seeing the initial recommendation. And so what this kind of suggests is that if you're in a situation like a pandemic where information is going to be consistently changing, actually communicating the uncertainty in a recommendation may be helpful in the long run in terms of adherence to recommendations in the general public. So I'm running some additional studies on this type of question and looking for people who are interested in analyzing that data as well. So you can find more information about me here on my website, dmds.lucymcgowan.com. You can apply here if you are interested in joining either as an undergraduate thesis student, or I also do have one spot for the summer if you're interested in doing a Eureka project as well. Thank you.